Hey listeners, Chris Godey here with some bonus business insight before we jump into today's episode. If you're looking for the right place to host your next business gathering, conference, or event, look no further than Orlando, Florida. It's no coincidence that Maxwell Leadership hosts our biannual International Maxwell Conference in Orlando. Between its many luxurious hotels, meeting spaces, and venues, Orlando is the perfect place for you and your team to gather, collaborate, and grow. Whether you're traveling for business or bringing your company for a meeting, there's a reason Orlando is as much a business capital as an entertainment one. And let's not forget the delicious cuisine at one of the many Michelin-rated restaurants where your team can kick off your evenings. So before you plan your next business event, check out Orlando, where the possibilities for business travel are unbelievably real. Learn more at orlandoforbusiness.com.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. Hi, I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership facilitator and coach.
And I'm Chris Godey, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. Well, as usual, today's topic comes right out of what we're creating for a client of ours in regards to you're getting ready to go do some training with them. Yep. They have a need, and that's how this content's coming to fruition. So just want to let you know that everything that goes on in here is real. It's in the field. It's in the field. And so if there's an opportunity for us at Maxwell Leadership to help you or your team or your organization, we would love to do that. If you'll go to maxwellleadership.com/podcast, click on this podcast. There's a form there you can fill out, and we'll get back in touch with you. You also there can download the learner guide for today's lessons. Well, today's lesson is titled Finding Your Leader Voice. And as I mentioned, this is something you're right in the middle of right now, preparing for a client of ours for an event. Talk a little bit about the need for this and then where we're going to go today.
Well, finding that as a leader, you have a voice, whether you know it or not, but is it one that people want to hear, that they listen to? Do they carries a powerful, inspiring, and influential voice? Or do you have less than that, a voice where people might turn away or not listen or shortchange it, or you don't influence people well? When I had this request, I began researching and just looking at what my personal point of view on it was about how does a leader develop the kind of voice that has this influential, inspirational, follow me because you want to kind of approach. Yeah. So not to put you on the spot, but does the voice come because of your title and position, that you're the boss? That's a trick question.
Yeah. As you sit here smiling at me, knowing that our entire basis, the foundation of what we do is off of influence. Yeah, that's right. Next week, another host will be joining me on our podcast. Is Perry? Well, I'm just kidding. No, 100% it's about influence. But let's dig a little bit deeper than that, because when you talk about that, they go, oh, well, how do I influence people? What does that look like? Because there is positive and negative influence. We talk a lot about the motive behind influence, and everything that comes along with that is going to play into your voice as a leader. And so jot down a couple of things. Number one, you need to be authentic. First of all, I'm a huge proponent of authentic leadership, and we often say that's a trust accelerator. The other thing is, this is something that I've had to learn over time, is the EQ side, the empathy side of leading. Remember, what we're talking about is how do you increase your influence in a way to where your leader voice is heard, and it all starts with influence. Like your voice is not going to be heard if you don't go about influencing and leading people the right way. And I think the other thing is there's some confidence in there. I think when I was thinking about this as a leader that I would follow or that I would listen to as their voice, I began thinking about, I want them to be authentic. I do want them to have some empathy. I want them to be confident too, in a way that where I would hear, absorb, and learn from that voice.
Well, I think that as we look at this, the direction I'd like to go is that what are the components? There are many, but if you were going to think about, I love empathy is one to talk about as well, that how you show up for people. But I think you have to start with trustworthiness or being, the trust is such a key accelerator, you said, of all things leadership, but trustworthiness is fundamental to your leadership. And it's really a function of two things, character and competence. I think I got that from Covey, and some of the writing on trust. But character obviously includes your integrity, your motive, intent that you have with people, but also your competence, your capabilities, your skills, the results, your track record, things like that. So people want to know, can you do the job? But also, do you do it with high character? How does a leader ensure they're making, and we use this metaphor when I teach this around making deposits or withdrawals in somebody's trust account. I've never met a leader once that said, I think I'm going to break the trust today. Nobody wants to break the trust.
You don't do it on purpose.
But we don't necessarily have 100% trust with our people. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think this is, I think it's foundational. I think it's key for leaders. For me, around trust, there's a couple things that are more important than others. I think that each of us probably have different rankings of what's important to us to build trust with people. But I immediately think about doing what you said you were going to do, being reliable. You've mentioned here in the past, we have on our team, right? There's no micromanaging, like a lot of freedom, and we kind of know where we're going. We're working on it together, and I love that because I love having a team of people around me that take that seriously, of being reliable and understanding that we gotta be responsible for our things. And when that happens, for me, there's trust. Obviously, it also is with your communication and with consistency and all those things that you would think about. But there's probably certain ones that you rank differently, and that's okay, but they're real. And so one of the things that, since we talked about communication, I think another one in developing this voice is, do they effectively communicate? Leaders, how many of us have been in a situation where we've had leaders and we're like, what'd they just say?
Yeah.
Or, what are we doing? Or we don't hear from them.
Yeah.
This also could be something that I need to work on, a lot of the schedule and things going on, not to communicate enough frequently to the team. And so we have to be doing that because we have to share information, and the team's got to know, most importantly, the team's got to know what's going on, but more importantly, what they're doing and how that's tied to the bigger part of what's going on. Like I wrapped up a meeting today before we started recording, and super proud of our marketing team for our event that we have coming up called Day to Grow. A lot of challenges over the last 5 months, and a lot of excuses could have been thrown around. Maybe they worked through them and continued to just improve and get better and better and better, to the point where I told them at next week's event that we're about to hit our goal, which none of us would have thought was doable. And so I looked at, each one of them, and I just told them, I was like, man, listen, super proud of where you're at and what you guys have accomplished. And by the way, when X result happens from them being at that event, that's tied directly to everything that you guys worked on and everything you went through and everything you pushed through. So being able to communicate that effectively to teams, I think, is also helps your leader voice. Now, one thing that could hurt a leader's voice when it comes to communication is that I mentioned earlier, because I've been there. What did she just say? Yeah. What did he say? Right? So you get confused. It reduces commitment from people. They get stressed. And again, when that happens, people are filling in the empty space with what they know it to be versus what they're hearing from their leader.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Yeah, another one on the communication, I think, that can hurt your credibility and your influence is lack of ability to listen to people. Yeah. If I don't feel like you hear me or you're not listening to me, then you're whatever you say, I don't really care.
That's right.
At that point, you make me feel small in doing that. I think actually listening is number one way to show value to someone. So if I listen to you and give you that undivided attention, I've just increased my ability of my voice with that.
I agree with that.
A third one I found was very important for having a leader's voice was approachability. And you think this has nothing to do with voice. No, it's about how people see you. And this that an approachable leader encourages dialogue. And so that by me feeling like I can come in your presence, I can see you, you're not too big or too out there for me, that I'm welcome in your presence. You want to be seen, makes me want to open up.
That's good.
It's easy to be friendly and easy to talk to. It really increases the likelihood that people want to see you that way. So you go back to that being friendly, being nice enough for people to want to connect with you. Is that there's so many ways not to be approachable. What are some things you've seen in people that what's hurts approachability?
Yeah. Pace of what you're doing around the office, right? Being too busy. To your point, I love the listening. Isn't that interesting? Not using your voice positions you in a way to have a greater voice by listening. So I love that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just think about one that I came from a very large corporate environment. Fortune 10 type hierarchies and lots of people, that sort of thing. And I thought what killed approachability when when you started, it just hit me. Their title, their position, they didn't have influence. They had big, senior VP types of titles that you couldn't. It was like talking to royalty. You have to have an appointment. You're not approachable. You're too big for me to do that. So
and we've heard it said, to your point, that your title. You need to be aware of this, leaders. This is real. Your title walks in the room before you do. And so there's already a preconceived expectation one way or another, and it's your responsibility to break that, to be approachable. We tell organizations that we train and coach all the time, sometimes we don't want the leader in the room. Right. Depending on the situation. Right. Because when that comes, they're not approachable. Everybody shuts down. So that is real. And so leaders, you got to fight that depending on the level that you're in the organization in order to be approachable so that your voice is heard. It made me think too of an event that I was at. And, if you've ever been in the event business, the day of the event, things are chaos and you probably I get my 10,000 steps before I get home, which is great. But I remember having to walk through a lobby a couple of different times at a pace that was pretty fast. Head down. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was trying to get some things done. And I had a buddy of mine call me out on it after the fact. And he's like, hey, man, I don't usually see you walk through a crowd of people and not even stop, say hi and acknowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, I could just tell you weren't approachable. You were on mission. And I was like, well, I was. Right. But that's just super awareness of me to have now, even though all that's going on in here, it's like a duck on a pond. Yeah. When you're around people, you got to make sure they're watching you all the time. And so if you want your voice to be heard, you got to make sure that you're approachable. So, well, you mentioned feedback earlier. Let's take this a little bit further. Let's talk about responsiveness to feedback. Can be another way that your leader voice is heard and that your influence increases. Leaders who respond to team members' input demonstrates that they value those contributions. I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like on the other side. I recently saw an email exchange between a couple of leaders, and one was giving some feedback to this other leader. And all of a sudden, the leader comes back and doesn't own it, doesn't accept it. There's no change, right? There's not going to be any action. And literally just calls the other one out And I'm like, what's going on here? So what the one that we were originally addressing in the email is losing their voice, is losing their credibility because of the way that they responded to that feedback. And one of the things right now that I hear John, Maxwell, and Mark talk a lot about in attributes of leaders that they're really just digging in on and looking for is the whole responsibility and coachability. If someone's responsible and coachable, they're going to have a voice. They're going to gain influence. And so just think about that as you receive feedback, absorb that, respond in the right way, and your voice will continue to be heard and have influence inside your team.
That's really good. I can't let the empathy comment go from earlier. I think another way to ensure your leader's voice is to show up with compassion and respect. And that compassion, I think, acknowledges empathy, that you understand the feelings and perspectives of other people. We talk about do they know that you care for them, and how do you show care for them? And one of them is understanding what they're going through. So I think you can really hurt your voice as a leader by being coming across as uncaring. I don't think I know many leaders who says, I don't care. They care.
They care.
But they're so busy with other things. They're so preoccupied. They don't really stop and walk slowly through the lobby.
Yeah, absolutely. It could have 100% been perceived.
See who's there and what the feelings are going on there. But it kind of feeds your emotional intelligence, your EQ. And are you, one, in control of your own emotions, but do you also recognize those that are going on in others?
Yeah, that's good. One other way that I'll share with you in regards to leaders' voices, if you don't have a vision and you're not clear about the mission of your team and of the organization, you're not going to have much of a leader's voice. A clear vision, helps align the team, motivates them to where they're going. You got to be able to articulate it. We come back to this whole communication thing, right? Effectively, and it'll make your voice more impactful. If people don't know, I love this, if people don't know where we're going, what we are trying to accomplish, and why you're trying to accomplish that, then there's no doubt your voice is going to be diminished. And this part of it reminded me of a really simple exercise that we do sometimes when we're facilitating content around this or that. And one of them is, as a leader, is it more important to you to be a good communicator or a good listener? It's always fun conversation in the room. What we're driving is understanding that everybody has different perspectives in the room. We talk about conflict management and team dynamics and culture around that. But I love that because most of the time, I would say there's very few hands that go up around communication, and then the rest go up for, listening. And as we work through that, we begin to hear conversations like, well, if they can't tell us where they're going, maybe it is communication. Well, and then I get the old, listening is part of communication. And as Perry said earlier, it really does help with your voice. But I do think it's important for us to understand we've got to be very clear on what is our vision, what is our mission, and be able to communicate that to the team to keep the voice.
The last one I'll share is a little more personal to me. I pay attention a lot when a leader amplifies the voices of others on the team. And I notice, I think you do this really well, is that you definitely have a point of view. You have a strong point of view. You've been doing this and you see this. You're at the top. You have a lot more visibility, but you always include the voice of others. And you call out their voice. You don't just take other people's ideas. You say, hey, Angie said this, or Amanda would like to voice that. I just think by ensuring that all of the voices are heard, that people feel like they have a voice, they're more likely to listen to your voice. It also leads to a more inclusive environment where we have a diverse team, and that diversity is a real advantage to us because of the amplifying of those diverse voices. Right. And you can really lose all the advantage of diversity by making it all about your voice and others just holding back. I'll just salute and stay mute. I'll assimilate to be like you. I'm not going to play in this, and you lose all of that.
I love that, thinking about the fact that your voice is heard. You find your leader's voice, it carries more influence the more you're able to amplify other voices and begin to put them on a path of their voices being heard. So I love that. Well, as we wrap up, leaders, you need a voice, right? You have one. You have, I don't
They're not listening to it.
You can lead, by being mute. Probably not an extremely effective way to do it. But man, you have a voice, but we got to make sure it is coming with the right motive. You got to make sure some of the things Perry and I shared with you today, you use it in a way that increases influence. It's not about a power. It's not about title. And I think it's also, too, allows you to create, if you have a voice that is respected, it allows you to create rallying cries, for the team, to where you're able to use your voice to help the team achieve things that they maybe would have never achieved without listening to your voice. And they don't listen to it unless you've created influence the right way. So,
well, great conversation. And as a reminder, if you'd like to learn more about our offerings, to get the learner guide for this episode, if you'd like to leave us a comment or a question, you can do all of that at maxwellleadership.com/podcast. We love hearing from you, and we're very grateful you'd spend this time with us. That's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.